Clive, you've been coming to Finland for nearly 10 years annually to do some work. And this is the latest of the work that you have been doing here, with several times a year you've been coming here. And this year we're meeting here have been meeting here at Labbnäs on Drags Fjord, Dragon's Fjord town, Labbnäs, and Chi gathering is this year's theme. And your work, otherwise, conscious connections. So can you say something about Chi gathering, or gathering Chi, something about what the connection is, and why the gathering of Chi and Chi gathering is so important, and a little bit about the purpose of this all. And since you always, in my estimation, start with locating yourself exactly where you are right now. So start with that.
Yeah, it's very important to locate yourself exactly where you are, because exactly the place you stand upon is the place that gives you the right to face the situation as it is. And you have to face the situation as it is without any kind of preference or attitude towards it, if you're going to be able to settle yourself down and be in your own integrity and your own authority and in command of your own life. So Chi gathering, it's a name I use for this annual gathering because it's gathering some of the people together who've worked with me for a long time, and it's the accumulation or connecting of the Chi over a number of days. Chi, vitality, energy, used consciously. Chi, conscious vitality. And the way we approach the work is by making connections within the field of energy or well-being inside, in order to see what the principles are that govern our life, in every respect of our life, to find out more about how the parts of the body are linked, but also parts of our lives are linked into one integrity, into one place. So the Chi gathering is an opportunity to accumulate Chi over 5 days or 4 days, whatever it is, and it's also an opportunity for me to gather together some of the threads that I've been working with in the previous months or year, so that I can update the people who come to these things, these retreats, with the work that I've been doing in England.
From what I know of your work, one of the very key things is that you always work at the same time with intelligence and the body. Can you say something about that connection?
Yeah, the work falls under the umbrella term conscious connections, because the aim is to use the Qigong and all the principles of energetic work that are encoded in Qigong to introduce more consciousness into the life and into the body being. Yeah? The body and the being of the body. To bring more consciousness doesn't mean more awareness. It means to bring more intelligence into alignment with the well-being in the body, so that you can use that connection between your well-being and your intelligence to bring more power into your life and your circumstances. So that, for example, you can invite the Chi in your body to work on your behalf to get rid of stagnant Chi, which translates sometimes as discomfort, unhappiness, or physical discomfort, psychic or psychological or physical discomfort. So you can use the Chi consciously to then free yourself or purge yourself of tension or stress and happiness.
So could you say something a little bit more about gathering of chi gathering, conscious connections, and the bigger picture?
When you want my whole work.
Yes, I do.
Because
you always give your whole work.
my whole work is about making conscious connections between the energy in the body and the intelligence in the body, or the intelligence in the space in the body. And to working towards the connection between the intelligence in the body, or the space in the body, and the well-being of the body, we have to pass through our human nature. And our human nature is built up upon the principles that we find in nature. So whenever you're working with Qigong, Tai Chi, anything like that, you're likely to encounter the principles of nature. The principles of nature translate into certain principles that affect human nature and our activity, our human activity, the way the body works, the way we relate to the outside world. So the study of Qigong is, or could be described as, the study of the principles encoded in the exercises and the movements that reveal how we are connected to the earth, how we're connected to the universe. Conscious connections is the umbrella term for all the work that I do. My aim is not simply to promote well-being by teaching a few physical exercises. The physical exercises are a way or a means or indeed an alibi for consciously introducing these principles to the individual. When I talk about the bigger picture, I'm using one of those principles by relating the circumstances of your daily life and the struggles that you might have in your own existence to the biggest of all possible pictures, universal principles. The intelligence in you is stimulated to embody those principles. That's like saying, this is a way of increasing your consciousness, your own consciousness. When you see the bigger picture of anything, there's an increase in your consciousness.
And in the bigger picture, you're always also situated in some smaller kind of a circumstance. And you often talk about this really important of locating yourself precisely where you are, because that is where I am at any given time.
Yeah.
And unless I am grounded like a tree in the spot that I'm in, this vertical connection that you talk about is not possible. Am I reading it right?
The tree is an example in nature of one of the it gives us an example, every tree gives us an example of the principle of connecting the earth to the sky. And so even in traditionally practiced forms of Qigong, and I don't, I develop these traditions for now. I don't teach the traditions. But traditionally, the practice of standing Qigong is related to what is described as standing like a tree, at the crown of the tree and the roots of the tree, connecting the sky and the earth. So that gives you an indication of a fundamental principle, which in me, in you, in every body, is the principle of the vertical connection between the crown of the head, the crown of the tree, and the roots or the feet, our connection through to the ground. And by consciously entering the space between the crown and the roots, the space, you can answer for yourself energetically, intelligently, completely without any mental reference or intellectual reference. The great question, what am I? Because I am that vertical connection between the above and the below. The letter 1, the letter I. The number 1, the letter I. So that's an example of one of the fundamental principles, or the first conscious connection that I make. I use this opportunity, call it a Qi gathering, once a year, and as you say, for the last number of years it's been taking place here, to pull together various threads in the work that's been going on, because my work develops all the time. I never seem to be able to go back and repeat something I've done before. It's always changing, always developing. So there are new threads that emerge through the classes I do at home in Somerset in England, and there are themes that arise in the talks that I give, and these opportunities, these retreats, are my attempt to pull everything together before we go on into the new for the next months. So that's one way you can understand the word Qi gathering, but also because we're here for a number of days, and it's quite an intensive process. Not just of the exercises that we do, before breakfast and at various times during the day, but also the talks that I give and the individual encounters with people, and then again, of course, the people going to the sauna and swimming in the lake and going for walks. And all of this is a way of accumulating Qi. Qi being, in my definition, your vitality made conscious. What is it to make something conscious? It's to know what you know, to know your vitality, to know what it is. And conscious connections, well, what does that mean? It means that we make connections between the individual and the universal, the principle and the personal, between points in the body which can work together to influence how you feel, flow of energy in the body. Connections between individuals in their daily life, how they manage their relationships, how they manage their partnerships, how they handle their work, their family life, their children, and so on. So conscious connections is an umbrella term to describe how to bring your intelligence, your pure intelligence, the intelligence in the space within you that's inside you, how to bring that into the world in a way that is significant and meaningful for you.
As you're talking, and I know I've done this Qigong work with you for several years, so I see at the same time as you're describing that, I see your body and currently mine. In some ways I'm doing Qigong because I'm sensing this connection, and I'm certainly sensing that in my field of experience, this vitality or this Qi is gathering. And it's also something that gets communicated when I listen to how in this particular moment and place and time you're expressing it in the latest fashion possible.
I never seem to be able to repeat it. It's always fresh and new, because that's what Qi is.
And
fresh
that's
and new.
Right?
That's a principle.
That's a principle.
Because there's no time in it.
That's right.
It doesn't come from the past. It comes from the sun, the universe. It might travel through what we perceive to be time, but in itself, Qi, or the vitality that we have within us, has no time in it. Hence, it doesn't matter how old you are, when you're free inside yourself, you still feel young. Now, you and I are getting quite old.
Absolutely.
but we can,
in age,
but in age, but not in vitality and not in the youthfulness
right.
of our passion for life,
That's right.
or engagement with things that really engage us.
Say a little bit more about that passion for life, because that's a theme that runs through this very much. And it's not passion as the world understands it. There's a very, very fine energy in that.
Well, how do you understand passion for life?
Well, it's this sense that I'm present in my love of something right now. And
That's right.
And it's
That's right.
vibrating in me. And I don't understand it, but I know it.
That's it. Can't be understood. Can only be known. And it's the engagement. It's the engagement of the intelligence in the space inside you with your well-being. That takes, as soon as everything else is gone, as you know, my aim really is to eradicate and wipe out everything psychological in you, so that
it's working.
So that there's a coming together or communion of the intelligence in the space inside you with this vitality that I'm speaking about, this chi, made conscious. When that's fully engaged, and there's no psychological impediment, then your life is purposeful. It's intelligent. How do you recognize anything that's intelligent? It's got purpose in it. Your life becomes more intelligent, more purposeful. Everything just happens. When everything just happens spontaneously, you could say that when everything happens spontaneously and freely in you, and the tide of the moment is outgoing, then there's a spontaneity and a passion for life. But of course, it's not always going out. It's not always expanding. It's not always like that, because you reach out. One of the principles, of course, is the pulse of life, which comes and goes, yin and yang. So as you come back, you pull back, you might not notice that passion for life. There might be a sort of natural contraction. Now, psychologically, when people pull back like that, psychologically they read that as negative, not good, depression, unhappiness, because they think about themselves so much. They think about how in the contracted state that's coming, which is a natural thing really, just as night follows day, they identify with it as a problem. So the passion for life isn't always, outgoing and effulgent, radiant thing. The passion for life also has its other side, which is contraction. And if you identify that contraction with psychologically, then passion turns into suffering. The passion of Christ, the guilt that is imposed on people by feeling that somehow or another they're not good enough to go to heaven, then the passion becomes a suffering. But no, not in truth. Truth, there is a constant fluctuation in the rhythms and levels of vitality, because there are gravitational waves in the universe that flow through everything, and they pick us up and they move us forward and they move us back according to the evolutionary cycle. Now, the thing I have to mention is that underneath everything that I talk about is not the story of life on Earth that can be interpreted by anybody as having any significance for them personally, but something utterly impersonal, which I talk about as the evolution of consciousness. Not your personal consciousness, but the evolution of consciousness in our universal system. And that's an impersonal thing. But every individual uses the personal circumstances of their life to make a contribution to this evolutionary process. That evolutionary process involves going out into the world, retreating from it, going out into the world, retreating from it.
I just noticed as you were talking that when you were saying some things, my head tried to grab on to them. But in Finnish language there is a wonderful wordplay. Letting go is also letting go of your head. Päästä irti means to let go of your head. And the minute I retreat, in a way, retreat into my studio, the waves continue, and they do contract and expand. But there's no content in here, and it's such a wonderful freedom, just to sort of listen also to the next wave that you're moving on, and you're right, you're living what you're teaching. That it's moving on, moment to moment to moment to moment to moment, and yes, the waves come and go, but that's fine. They do that also on the lake, and they do in nature.
We're always engaged in something that has significance, but we can never tell exactly what the significance is. We can approximately describe it as it's revealed to us, but we lend ourselves to a greater purpose when the intelligence in the space within connects with the vitality I am. We lend ourselves to a greater purpose, and we cannot necessarily monitor it. We can't necessarily judge what's happening. But it's as you say, it's a passionate endeavour. So much of what we do is informed by the earth, by the energy of the earth in that place. So much of what we do. Now the information is not retained up here. It goes into the unconscious of the person. And more and more and more I work in the unconscious of the people. So they're not really, you can't necessarily be aware of what it is that's happening to you or what's changing. You might notice afterwards. You might notice a week or a few days afterwards that something's changed, but at the time you won't notice. Just as the same way that you don't notice, this is how chi works, this is how nature works. You can't really notice the moment when a bud becomes a leaf, or when a leaf is ready to fall off the tree, or when the fruit is ripe. It just happens, subtly, or barely noticeable. Well, that is how change takes place in this work. It takes place in the unconscious, and you only notice it when you're given some kind of reference that makes you look at yourself and you say, oh, something must have changed when I was at Labbnäs. I don't remember what happened particularly, but something changed. I'm clearer, I'm in a different place now. And that's how this work is.